Hi, and welcome to the program. Tropical Storm Helene is moving up through the southeast today. Last night, it absolutely roared ashore in Florida as a monster Category 4 hurricane with devastating winds and powerful storm surge.
Millions of people are now without power. CBN's Operation Blessing is on the scene to help those hit by this deadly storm, and Charlene Aaron has the story.
Overnight, Hurricane Helene slammed into Florida, south of Tallahassee, with heavy rain and winds topping 140 miles per hour. The storm prompting a rare extreme wind warning, with forecasters calling it exceptionally dangerous and life-threatening. In Tampa, roads looked like rivers, and video shows transformers exploding.
This storm is raging. I have got flooding so bad you can't even imagine.
Near St. Petersburg, this hotel lobby completely underwater. And the storm turning deadly after a sign fell onto a vehicle on Interstate 4, killing the driver. In Cedar Key, this man staying to ride out the storm.
It's the worst storm I've ever been in my whole life. And right now, it feels like the whole island is coming apart. The storm surge is closing in on 3 sides. Several of our streets are impassable. There are trees down everywhere. The wind sounds like a freight train outside right now.
Those who defied mandatory evacuation orders asked to write their name, birth date, and other information on their arms or legs so they can be identified. Facing potentially serious damage and life-threatening conditions, residents have been frustrated with having to deal with yet another hurricane.
It's like a bad dream over and over. It's like as soon as you get cleaned up for one storm, 6 months later, you're getting hit again, or 8 months later, you're getting hit again.
Some were still trying to get out as water began filling roads. More than 1 million homes and businesses are without power. Last summer, Hurricane Idalia brought about 9 feet of storm surge in the same region in Florida where Helene hit, leaving most homes underwater. Helene expected to deliver catastrophic storm surge of some 20 feet. CBN's Operation Blessing arrived ahead of the storm in Mariana, Florida.
We are looking at anywhere between 5 to 20 foot of storm surge. Just to give you an idea, 20 foot of storm surge looks like a 2-story house completely submerged underwater.
Operation Blessing was already in place to meet the physical and spiritual needs of those impacted by the storm.
We have actually brought our mobile kitchen with us so that as soon as the storm passes, we can start evaluating the areas and seeing if there's a need that arises for feeding operations.
Operation Blessing also prepared with other essential supplies such as chainsaws, shovels, and coolers to assist residents with cleanup and recovery after the storm.
Just meeting them where they're at, just like Jesus would ask us to do. OB is very committed to being able to do that with others and to show and spread not only the light and the gospel, but the love that we have deep in our hearts.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Even with the warnings and media coverage about this storm, I think it's still taken a lot of folks by surprise. And if you're seeing the footage on other networks as well, you're seeing the destruction is horrendous, this flooding. And as I speak, it's still raging. Now, what's going to happen if you've never been in a disaster zone after a hurricane, for instance? I've been able to be with Operation Blessing on many times reporting. And when people get back to their homes, they are literally going to be staring at their property, what's left of it, or walking in circles because they're also dealing with trauma. So they have to pick up the pieces regarding their home and moving forward, and they're traumatized. And what Operation Blessing is able to do is put an arm around people and say, we're here for you. Let us begin to help you pick up the pieces. Also, for first responders and those who volunteer to help. I mean, it's even cutting trees off of houses. We have volunteers who do that in coming days. These relief workers, at the end of a day where they're probably sleeping on a church floor, need and desire a hot meal. And we're able to do that as well. We can't help everybody, every family in every state, but we can make a tremendous difference in many communities working with churches. So the time is now to help Operation Blessing. If you'd like to do so, we value your contribution. Please give us a call, 1-800-700-7000, or you can go to ob.org/obdisaster. Again, ob.org/obdisaster. Numerous states are in deep trouble now, and we need to hear from you. And we can be the hands and feet of Jesus, as you heard in that report. It's a great opportunity to step up and show the love of Christ. People are listening right now. In other news, the presidential race is in the home stretch, and both candidates are focusing on key swing states that will decide who wins the White House. Wendy Griffith has that story and more from our CBN newsroom. Wendy.
Thanks, Andrew. Pennsylvania may prove to be the most important swing state of all, giving the winner the victory in the Electoral College. Polls show an extremely tight race there. CBN's Jenna Browder traveled to the Keystone State to talk with voters.
It's election season in all-important Pennsylvania. From the big cities to the small towns and communities.
We'll do that for you from the White House, all right?
Both campaigns are crisscrossing the state and spending big bucks here. And for good reason. Pennsylvania has 19 electoral votes, more than any other battleground state. And if history is any indication, voters here have picked 10 of the last 12 presidential winners.
Kamala Harris, of course.
In Philadelphia, we found overwhelming support for Vice President Harris.
I feel as though she's more for the people, women's rights, and just for the people.
And that's expected. Harris has to run up her numbers here and in other big cities. She also has to build on Democrats' success in surrounding suburbs.
This race will not be won in Pittsburgh or Philadelphia.
Selena Zito with the Washington Examiner lives in Pennsylvania and is very familiar with the state's politics.
This race will be won in other counties by about 500 extra voters in each county over what happened in 2020.
And that's why both campaigns are making Pennsylvania's rural communities a priority.
This is Johnstown in western Pennsylvania. The area went for Trump in 2016 and 2020, but this time around, the Harris campaign could see an opportunity.
She's for people.
In the downtown area, we found more support for Harris than former President Trump.
I'm a small business owner, and she's all about, helping small businesses.
But if signs on the edges of town and those lining every road we traveled mean anything, Trump remains as strong as ever in this part of the state.
I'm a Trump guy, and I'm voting for Donald Trump.
25 miles north in Indiana, Pennsylvania, Trump enthusiasm appeared as electric as ever. Thousands coming from across western Pennsylvania to support the 45th president, some waiting upwards of 10 hours in the rain to get in.
Sometimes we don't like the mean tweets and so forth, but his policies are spot on for this country, and we need help.
I work for my money. I don't want to keep giving it away.
One group of women even drove all the way from upstate New York.
And what made you all want to come 6 hours to be here?
We love President Trump, and I feel like it's now more important than ever to actually show your support for a candidate, and he's definitely going to win.
Trump is looking to expand his numbers in these rural counties that he carried with more than 70% in 2020. He also needs to chip away at Harris's strength in the big cities and suburbs. Other key areas of the state include Northampton and Erie counties, both bellwethers for the race.
I expect a lot of time spent by Trump and Vance in Erie. That is the most important county, not just in the state, but in the entire country. As go Erie County, so goes the rest of the country.
The X factor in it all is turnout. Polling in Pennsylvania consistently shows about 95% of voters already have their minds made up. The goal for both campaigns is to attract just a few from the other camp. In this all-important battleground state, we'll be watching closely on election night. In Pennsylvania, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Thanks, Jenna. Some say as Pennsylvania goes, so goes the nation. The election, we'll see. Well, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will address the UN today. As Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem, his speech comes while Israel's enemies continue their rocket attacks and many nations call for a ceasefire.
Air raid sirens rang out across Tel Aviv early today as the Houthis aimed a missile at Israel's high-tech center from Yemen. The Israeli military said its Arrow anti-missile system intercepted it. In Beirut, the IDF eliminated another top Hezbollah commander, this time the one who oversaw the terror group's drones and cruise missiles. Mohammed Swar was also at one point a top advisor to the Houthis in Yemen on how best to use their drones and missiles. That attack came as the White House is upset that Israel is rejecting an international call for a ceasefire, especially after the Americans say they believe top Israelis had already given tacit approval to that very public appeal.
We wouldn't have issued it when and how we did if it wasn't supported by the conversations that we are having with top Israeli officials yesterday, and those conversations continue today.
An Israeli government spokesman clarified Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's position.
Reports about a ceasefire being already agreed are not accurate. The Prime Minister's reiterated that, yes, of course, Israel is open to diplomacy, as we have been. It's always our go-to option.
After Netanyahu landed in the U.S. for a speech today at the UN, he again made clear why he wants to keep up the war on Hezbollah.
Our policy is clear. We're continuing to strike Hezbollah with full force, and we will not stop until we reach all our goals. Chief among them, the return of the residents of the north securely to their homes.
In his UN speech, Netanyahu is expected to argue that Israel's offensive attacks on Hezbollah and Hamas are a justified defense against those terror groups' war to wipe out Jews and the Jewish state. Netanyahu's address comes after Palestinian Authority leader Mahmoud Abbas made his case to the UN Thursday. Although he talked about establishing a Palestinian state alongside Israel, he also hinted at kicking the Jews out of what he called Palestine.
It will remain ours, and if anyone were to leave, it would be the occupying usurpers.
Abbas also claimed the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, the holiest site in Judaism, is, quote, exclusive property of Muslims. On Thursday night, nearly 50,000 Jews gathered next to the Temple Mount to pray for the swift return of the hostages, the safety of the soldiers, and for the security and unity of the people of Israel. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks, Chris. Andrew, Israel continuing to defend itself on all fronts.
Yeah, thank you, Wendy. As things continue to escalate, I was just thinking this morning, looking at the news, the United States is in this natural disaster. Horrific what's going on. And Gaza, Israel, and the war keeps escalating, more and more violence. And we're in a political season. There is a lot in the news to keep us anxious and draw our attention. And I just, in some prayer time, felt led to Isaiah 26, where the word says, "You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast on you, Lord, because we trust in you." And all that's going on in the world and all that can take our attention and cause us anxiety and stress. Let's remember, if you're watching this program and you love the Lord, have Scripture and Christ be your foundation. It's all that's happening. Pray for Israel, pray for the region, but stay grounded in the Word. And I pray for you, Romans 15, may the God of hope fill you with all peace and joy as you're overpowered by the Holy Spirit of God. We have peace in Jesus in a volatile world. Remember that today. There is peace in the Lord.